Welcome to Governance Bites. I'm Mark Banicevich, and today, once again, it is my absolute privilege to spend time with Dr. Peter Crowe. Peter, thank you very much again for your time.
Look, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Our last conversation was astounding, and I know you have so much knowledge and experience. For a bit of background, Dr. Crowe had a PhD in corporate governance and strategy. He's not only a very experienced director and chair, he's also designed and delivered governance courses around the world in places as diverse as India, Kenya, Lithuania, Ireland. He's presented about governance on 5 continents, and he works with and advises boards around the world. An absolute wealth of knowledge, one of the world's most renowned experts in governance, and an absolute privilege to spend time with you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
This time in our conversation, we want to talk about governance and corporate failure. We often think of the role of governance in business success, but we do know that around the world companies do fail, despite having in many cases very experienced boards. So you've got governance experience with many places around the world. The role of the board of directors to oversee the company, to hold management to account. And despite this, we do still see corporate failures.
Yep.
So what drives corporate failure?
So it's a really good question, but let's start on the other side of the coin with success.
Yes, great.
There are many pathways to success. I think we need to put that down as an important marker peg. So we hear from our various our directors' institutions around the world, various consultancies, this is best practice. Do this, and goodness will happen. Right? We hear that a lot, and yet failures still happen. We also hear from institution 1 a set of best practice, and institution or consultancy 2 a different set of practice, and so which one's right? Because they can't both be best if they're incongruent. They'll overlap, but they both can't be best. So I just wanted to sort of provide that as framing. So directors and boards that want to drive performance, want to succeed, want to ensure the sustainable future of the organisation, need to make sure they've locked in those principles, and then they practice according to what's in front of them, because it is a bit idiosyncratic. But if we come to your question, you've got all of that difference in how we achieve success, but you've got remarkable alignment on the failure side.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so I've been involved in about 30 failure or significant misstep studies, and some of them I've had, if you will, deep throat access, confidential access into boardrooms and into situations post the failure, and in 1 or 2 cases concurrent with. And behaviour would be the word. That misbehaviour seems to be that common thread through the failings, and that might express itself as ineptitude, incompetence, fraud, malfeasance, hubris. Another one that's sort of on the edges is perhaps a weak or poor understanding of what governance is, and then wrapped around that the skills. So if you stand up a board with lots of accountants and lawyers in it, you're probably going to get a strong focus on the numbers and the boundaries. But ultimately, it's about behaviour.
Okay.
That's what drives it.
Can you then elaborate on these behaviours?
Yes, so there's those ones that I mentioned, but fundamentally, a board is a group of men and women who gather together from time to time, receive some reports, hopefully a week in advance, sometimes not, and hopefully they're coherent and well structured, sometimes not, and hopefully they're at a measured length, sometimes bulky. And in a week, or sometimes less, we've got to make sense of that. So we come into the boardroom from multiple different perspectives based on what we've been doing that morning, that week, that month,
yes.
Our lifetime experiences. Having read this material, having thought about it, and we all got different perspectives, and none of us has got the full picture. So we've got to talk to each other, got to listen to each other. But actually I'm a busy guy today, and we need to finish the board meeting. So my engagement is not quite what it should be. And I remember a question being asked some years ago now to do with directors' remuneration here in New Zealand. And the speaker at the front of the meeting said, well, job of the board is to employ the chief executive and hold him to account. And directors don't get paid enough anyway. So it was. I was fortunate enough to have a private conversation with a gentleman later that evening, and his comment was, directors have not got time to engage well. To which my response is, well, have they got time not to? You know. So the whole behaviour thing comes down to power, ego, our commitment to do the right thing, and of course we're an elite group. We're at the top of the organisation. So without getting into the detail, that starts to paint the picture. Hopefully we can talk about it some more if you wish.
In your experience of corporate failure, does it tend to be across all members of the board, or have you got other examples where it's one or two members that have these behaviours of which you speak, and the rest, there are some people on the board that are trying to do the right thing, that are putting the effort in, but don't have enough sway to keep the company on track?
The latter. Because we're coming from different perspectives, and some people might have a compliance orientation. In fact, I had a conversation this morning with the chair for an engagement that I'm going to be doing soon, and the comment was there are some board members, some directors who have a very traditional view of governance. They're comfortable in their contribution, and there are others on the same board who are committed to learning, committed to doing the right thing, and very much future focused on driving performance. So the challenge for that chair is, how do we coordinate that to get the result? And that's a driving question for when I go and have a chat with them. So yes, there are differences, but the job of the chair is to moderate those differences, manage them, because fundamentally the decisions are made by the board as a whole. And so there's this interesting, challenge in boardrooms that's unique, in that we all come in as individuals. We come in with our preconceptions, our partial knowledge. We speak and listen, ask questions, we join dots, but ultimately it's the board, which is all of us together, that's recorded as making the decision. Carried, not carried, even if I disagree. Yes, these behaviours are individual, but fundamentally that doesn't matter, because if there's a problem, it's on all of the board.
And if I think back to the last time we spoke, you also talked about the commonalities across governance globally, really being fundamentally around the complexity of all of the things that are going on in the environment around the company, and managing that complexity, even when you've got a team of people that are working hard and trying to do the right thing, is difficult in itself. But having a few people on that board that are, as you say, driven perhaps by ego, or whether there's some incompetence there, or those sorts of behaviours, can absolutely lead to a result of failure. Of course I expect that there'll be cases where you won't be able to name companies, particularly where things aren't so public, and there may be cases where there are public examples you can give us. Are there any examples you can talk us through about corporate failure and where the behaviours have driven it?
So I can talk to one more around skill sets than behaviours, because there is not an alignment, but there's an association. So if we take here in New Zealand, Fletcher Building, recently been in the press. Okay, it's not the first time in recent years that they've been in the press around, quote, governance failure or board failure, unquote. So last time round, one of the difficulties is that we had no construction experience or industry sector experience in the boardroom. So the questions that directors would ask, and the knowledge of where and how to probe for projects, would have naturally been compromised. So there would have been a behaviour based, and I'm guessing on this because I've not been involved directly, but with many accountants and lawyers in the room, chances are they were reliant on the chief executive for that sector knowledge, and history shows that that's probably perhaps a little bit misplaced.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there are others that I can talk about. One, I can't name the organisation, but I know very well. There was a sound of tearing paper at the beginning of most board meetings. It was in the days that board papers were presented in an envelope, and the tearing was the opening of the envelope for the first time as the gentleman sat down in the board meeting.
Wow.
Yep. And when he was asked about it, the answer was, I understand this organisation, I understand the sector, and I can read slightly ahead.
So that was from an individual in the boardroom, not
That
from
was
the entire board?
That was an individual in the boardroom who commanded a degree of respect and power because of his status in the community and status in the sector, who effectively was backing himself to be an inch ahead of the rest.
And was coming unprepared to the board meetings while other members of the board would potentially divert to that individual for minor decision making. Correct. When that person was unprepared and didn't know what was going on.
But that's your assessment and mine too.
Yes.
But that individual was of the view that he was adequately prepared because he had all of this. So there's another part of this particular puzzle is around objectivity and distance, that if I read the papers or have that deep knowledge and come into the boardroom, then I can consider aloof the situation, agency theory it's called, I can be more objective in my decision making. And yet example after example after example does not support that.
So directors out there, if you are a director, prepare for board meetings and don't rely on your past experience.
Or rely on your experience to some extent, because you've got to maturity and wisdom matters big time.
Yes, absolutely.
Big time, right? So we read our papers. And may I talk about how I go about it?
Yeah,
would
please,
that
I'd
be
love
useful?
to hear that.
Yeah. So the papers arrive.
Yes.
They might arrive in a board portal software on the iPad, or they might arrive as a PDF. I don't have any boards, perhaps in the last 5 years, where they arrive as hard copy pieces of paper.
I don't think so anymore, no.
No, but it's quite good because it saves me kilograms in my satchel when there's less paper. But I still need to navigate around on the thing. So what I do, the day they arrive, I read them from end to end in a linear function and just set them down. I come back generally about 36 to 48 hours later, and this time I read them section by section, taking notes, and I jump around and cross-reference, and I start to formulate my questions or areas of inquiry. And then I may read back to other board papers or minutes and or read out to other things going on in the sector, the marketplace. Say there's a pricing issue or a strategic opportunity issue or a capital project, and I just want to draw in on other things. So I'm quite slow with this and intentional. And so that preparatory work typically takes me twice as long as the elapsed time of the meeting. And that's just that part. And then my more broad reading in terms of sector, disruption, whatever it is, that's on top of that. So that's what gets me to about that 5-to-1 ratio.
Right, that's a really good heuristic to work with. And yes, to simply go into a meeting and rely purely on your background expertise is very risky for you as a director and for the company. Of course, you're going to bring that into the room, but preparation is essential. And I love the suggestion. So you read through once from go to woe,
yep.
And then you'll go through again, and the second time through you'll make notes, and having familiarity with what's broadly in the paper, you can move from one area to another when they're related and and pull out themes and so forth.
Yeah, and potentially any discrepancies or incongruence that you that may be there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's stuff that I'm going to miss.
Yes.
But there's a group of men and women around the table, and if they've prepared, and I think I'm probably a slow preparer, but if they've prepared also, they're going to see other things.
Yes.
And it's that multiple perspectives that helps us understand more clearly. Whereas if I just read it through 2 or 3 times and I was the guy only, you're going to get one view of the world.
That's why you're board as a team. You have a set of different background, experience and skills, and people, whether there's a different background, if you've got a background in marketing, for example, or product, then your lens that you're looking through at those materials will be influenced by that background.
It's natural, and also your cultural background.
Yes.
So if I was to sit on an Australian board or a Kenyan board, or if I'm from a social sector and I'm now sitting in on an entrepreneurial startup, that lived experience is going to bring a different perspective. So it's not about what I look like, the physical diversity, it's about the cognitive diversity in the boardroom and how we go about assessing and problem solving.
Yes, and that is influenced by many things, including your culture, your upbringing, your gender, but also your experience, your career, your past career, and those sorts of things.
I think so. And but boards still fail. And we might make what seems like at the time a fantastic decision, and we might even monitor the chief executive in terms of the implementation of. But boards generally make the big decisions, because straightforward ones management makes.
Yes.
So we make the big decisions based on our delegated authority, whatever it is, strategic impact, and most of those decisions is quite an elapsed time before the implementation of that decision is completed, and then of course the impact and the outcome, or the desired outcome, and much can change. So it could be that staff get in the way because they disagree, or competitive forces, or technological disruption, or somebody launches some weapons in another country and you get the geopolitics playing. And it might have been a good decision at the time, but now the implementation doesn't work.
It doesn't matter how well you try to anticipate risk, there are always things that can come through and surprise you.
So Roger Martin in Canada, a well-known Harvard Business Review, many times author, talks about strategy. And he says the purpose of strategy is not to eliminate, also the goal is not to eliminate risk. It's to improve the odds of success.
Yes.
Because, humans are remarkably poor at predicting the future.
Yeah, very much.
So we've got to be awake. To be asleep at the wheel, to be passive, is to misunderstand governance.
Absolutely. Thank you. Given that conversation, I'm going to ask you one final question, if I may.
Sure.
What is the best advice you would give to perhaps a budding director?
Breathe. Which sounds funny, doesn't it? So breathe, you can't talk, humans, we cannot utter when we're breathing in. So I want you to breathe, I want you to think about the long game. Many people are running towards governance these days as some exciting career or whatever. But if you're a budding director, this is a long game. Just because you're interested does not make you a strong candidate, it just means you're interested. So it's the long game, read widely, take your time, and when you do receive an appointment, watch, breathe. You don't have to be a hero on day one.
That is excellent advice. The other, of course, advantage of breathing is that it helps you move from your emotional state to a more cognitive state. So you can take your time and think about what's going on and take things in before you express your views.
It sounds like you've read some neuroscience to work that out.
A bit of a background in martial arts, I think, is probably...
Oh, there you go. There you go.
So, but thank you, Peter, very much for your time and your expertise. It's just an absolute joy to spend time with you. I'll hopefully get the chance to do this with you again.
Let's see.
And I'll look forward to seeing you next episode. Thank you for watching this episode of Governance Bites. We have more episodes on YouTube and your favourite podcast channel, where I interview directors and experts on various topics relating to boards of directors and governance. We'd love to see you back, and please like, subscribe, and share the videos and podcasts.